In this episode of Finding 44, we find out how two professional athletes found their purpose outside of sports after retirement. Former Colts quarterback Jim Sorgi and former Cardinals outfielder Joey Vandever explain how their journeys in the NFL and Major League Baseball inspired them to launch ProTeam Tactical. Jim and I have known each other for years, doing TV and radio together covering the Colts. And one thing I found so interesting is how they were inspired to support first responders through their own experiences.
I was introduced to ProTeam several years ago and was so impressed by their visionary approach to first responder support through the lens of elite sports performance. Now, with the launch of ProTeam Foundation and their commitment to providing care to life-saving heroes, regardless of cost, we knew we had to hear from Jim and Joey directly. Some of the statistics might shock you, as I know they did me. Choosing to show up for others is what this podcast is all about, and I can't think of a more aligned group than first responders to shine a light on. Listeners, it's another good one with Champions for Change, Jim Sorgi and Joey Vandever.
Jim, Joey, great to be with you guys. And Jim, I feel like I have to catch everyone else up to the fact that you and I have been friends for years. We've done hundreds of hours of TV and radio together. We've hosted shows. We have called games. So it's fun to get to kind of bring this all full circle.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And it's obviously great to see you. Miss you so much. It's been a few years since we've been able to work together, but we have done pretty much all types of different shows together, and it was a blast when we were doing it. And I'm glad to see you're thriving still and still doing great. And it's so good to see you today.
It's so good to see both of you guys and to have, this opportunity to now share what you're doing from the standpoint of Sorgi Sports and ProTeam. So Jim, Joey, from each of your perspectives, can you take us through your careers transitioning from being professional athletes and, finding what you're doing from that? Because we tend to see a lot of times as people navigate out of your career when it's so structured, you go from a lifetime of preparing day in and day out for games, you have practices, everything is so regimented that oftentimes, from a professional athlete standpoint, a lot of people struggle with that next phase of their careers and transitioning.
Well, what was so great is that we kind of had each other, right? Joey played Major League Baseball. I played in the NFL. So when we both got done playing, having each other as friends and then kind of transitioning that friendship into a business relationship and what that was going to be and what that was going to look like. It wasn't like I was doing it on my own. He was doing it on his own. We both had different things that we were getting into after our careers. I went kind of into the radio broadcasting thing for a little while with obviously you, Larra, and doing shows and doing the radio for the Colts games and things like that. But I think our ultimate goal together was to open businesses that really helped the first responder community. And the reason behind it is because we have so many family members in our family trees that were first responders. All the way from the fire service to law enforcement to even military and tactical. And what we found as professional athletes is when you're given the very best, right? You're given all the tools and resources to be at your best, to perform on whatever athletic field that you play on. It could be the baseball diamond, the football field, the basketball court, the soccer pitch. I mean, whatever it is, athletes are given the very best in terms of injury rehab, strength conditioning. It's a lot better now with the mental health services than it was back when I played or we played. But it's always give athletes whatever they need to be at their very best. But when it comes down to it, athletes are just playing a kid's game, really, from that standpoint. And no matter how much it feels like a life and death situation, you're always going to go home that night to your families, to your friends, and you're going to get up the next day. Well, what we found is that there was a severe lack of the tools and resources that public safety and first responders were given in terms of making sure they're at their best when the bell rings or the call comes in, and they don't know what they're walking into, right? They don't know the situation. It could be a life and death situation. So many times first responders go to work, go on a run, go on a call, and then they don't go home that night. And family members are going to funerals and laying them to rest. And it's a very sad situation. And if we can provide professional athletes with all the tools and resources to be at their very best, then we darn sure need to provide it to first responders to be at their very best, because they're the ones that we call on our worst day. When we're running away, they're running in. So make sure they're at their peak from a physical standpoint. Make sure that they're getting the type of rehab they need from an injury standpoint. Making sure they're mentally strong from a mental and behavioral health standpoint. And I think once we found out from our family members, other people, friends that we've talked to, that they were not receiving that type of care, that they were kind of being overlooked, and we rely on them so heavily in those types of situations, that we felt that needed to change. And because we spent so much time in athletics, we knew the model that we needed to bring to public safety. It was the athletic model. It was bring them that high level of care, that immediate scene from an injury, find out the problem, get them back to 100%, keep them healthy, both physically and mentally, because physical affects mental, mental affects physical. Then that, from that standpoint, they'll be in a much better place to come and put their well-being at risk to save us, but then protect themselves and all the other first responders they work with, so they can go home and be with their families after their work is done.
Jim, you mentioned that you guys were friends and you've navigated through this together. You've had each other. Joey, how did you guys initially meet? How did your paths cross?
So, great question. So I'm originally from Cincinnati. Jim's from Michigan. Our wives are actually here locally, Brownsburg and Avon. So when we got done playing, I moved our family to Indy. He moved his family from New York to Indy, and our wives actually reconnected. Unfortunately, our two kids were the only two kids crying at school, so they had to stick around a little bit after class. And Lana and Sarah got to reunite there, and being two athletes and from different cities, our wives said, "Hey, you guys should meet one another." And now we're here today, almost 15 years later, running businesses and having a strong friendship.
Yeah, they knew each other when they were in high school, so they worked together. His wife went to Ben Davis, my wife went to Brownsburg, but they worked together and things like that. So they were friends right around that 17, 18, 19-year-old stage. And then I would kind of drifted apart a little bit, but then yes, they kind of reconnected when our two middle sons were in the same class, and they recognized each other, and then it was like, hey, your husband needs to be my husband needs to be your husband. And it was like love at first sight.
That's awesome. And I know we're missing kind of the third leg of the leadership stool here with Tim Drudge. And Tim and I go way back to his St. Vincent Sports Performance days. And I learned from him very directly kind of that holistic health model and how you support the whole athlete, mind, body, soul, kind of that mentality. Jim, you had mentioned kind of about the various components of mental and physical support for these first responders. What are the components of the services that ProTeam offers and that you found are the most impactful and the most utilized by first responders kind of coming from that athletics world?
So what we found is, and what athletes know, is that if they get hurt on the athletic field, that they go to an athletic training room. That's their first stop. They're going to see an athletic trainer. They're going to see a clinician of some sort to kind of get evaluated. And that happens relatively quickly. And then from there, they're going to go, if they need to, from that injury standpoint, it to kind of work itself up the chain to go see a doctor, right? An orthopedic of specialist of some sort. And when they go see that orthopedic, they're going to get some sort of diagnostics, an X-ray, an MRI, something along those lines to figure out the problem. And this is going to happen relatively quick, especially in season, because they play, from my standpoint, week to week, right? Sunday, Monday, Thursday. So you got to figure out what the problem is and see if it's something that you can play with while you're fixing or rehabbing, or if it's something that you got to get pulled from, get fixed, and then get back as quickly as possible. What we found is that from a first responder standpoint, they would get hurt and they kind of get lost in the shuffle a little bit. Like it was your traditional work comp insurance model where let's do the very least to try to save a ton of money up front, but it takes a ton of time for them to get back. So things in athletics that we would get back relatively quick from, say, a minor surgery or a sprain, a strain, a tweak, or something like that, was taking them months, if not years to come back from. So what we've done is just kind of take that model from athletics where, they can come see us right away. They get evaluated. And then through our relationships, we can get them in to see an orthopedic specialist. And with our communication between our clinicians and the orthopedic specialist, they know if they're going to need some sort of diagnostics right away. So we can get that scheduled pretty quickly. If a surgical intervention is needed, we can get that scheduled pretty quickly. So the aggressive type of care up front and figuring out what's going on is saving so much time in the back end. So then they're not off work for months. They're not going into that, black hole of loneliness, because as an athlete, as a first responder, you identify as that athlete or a first responder. So if you're not on the field, you feel like you're kind of letting people down. You're not there for them. You kind of go into this funk, this, very dark place from a mental standpoint. So the quicker we can get them healthy and back, the better it is from the mental standpoint.
I'll just add something real quick. So we're actually taking that same approach on the mental health side. So similar to the Colts, kicking the stigma, getting that treatment early and often rather than wait until they're broken. And so Jim mentioned it earlier, physical affects mental, mental affects physical. We've heard some horrible stories where somebody sustains a musculoskeletal injury and, they're away from their team because that's how they identify. Then, mentally it's taking a toll on them as well. So we're taking that same approach on the mental health side in regards to the proactive approach and come forward, when there's a minor injury. We call them injuries. We don't call them, PTSD, or we call it PTSI. So they're injuries. And the sooner that we can treat these things, the sooner that we can take care of them, again, both on the mental and the physical side, that's what we're all about. So as an athlete, the athletic trainers, the PT, the docs, they take a holistic approach. That's what we want to do for the first responders as well, is keep them in, tip-top shape, both mentally and physically. And, Larra, you mentioned it earlier, structure and things of that nature. We knew exactly what to do if there was an injury. Today, a lot of these folks don't. They don't know where to go, who to go get seen by, who's the best orthopedic specialist, who's the best psychologist. Now, and the Colts are doing a very good job of kicking that stigma. Folks are seeking out treatment from psychologists or therapists or orthopedic specialists or whoever it may be. We want to take that same exact approach, both mentally and physically, with our first responders.
Yeah. A lot of times athletics gets all the love, so to speak. You have sports medicine, right? You have sports psychology. Well,
it's the glamorous side, right?
It's the glamorous side. I mean, you could literally, with the population, because there are so many first responders out there, military, firefighters, police officers, EMS, corrections, dispatch, everybody that deals in those types of situations, that it's almost like you could have a tactical athlete medicine, a tactical athlete psychology, and just kind of put it out there for it to be known that they're dealing with the exact same things that athletes do.
Take us back a little bit. You guys mentioned at the beginning that you both have a family connection to the first responder community and kind of the basis for your awareness of that void there. Kind of help us understand, do you remember as kids kind of having an idea of kind of this first responder world and kind of heroic people in your lives, or what, as you were transitioning into that career after professional football, professional baseball, how was that something close enough to you where you had that awareness of we got to do something here?
Well, I mean, when we were growing up, first responders were looked at differently. They say, who do you want to be when you grow up? You say, I want to be a police officer. I want to be a firefighter, right? I want to be a professional athlete. I mean, they were always in that realm. And then on my family side, on my wife's side, I have two brother-in-laws that are firefighters. And I'll let you talk about the family lineage on your side. Go ahead.
Yeah, so my father-in-law was the former chief of Indianapolis, brother-in-law, deputy chief of Indianapolis, and then my brother, military background and spent several years PD down in Louisville and now as a firefighter. So, when you start to talk about family and recognition and things of that nature, I'll be honest with you, for me, I thought all first responders, everybody, quite frankly, received the same treatment as we did as professional athletes. But you start to talk to not only our family members, but a lot of the folks outside that are in law enforcement or public safety or whatever, and they'll tell you about the lack of resources that they are getting from both mental and physical. So when he and I found out, that those folks were not receiving that care, and it was a need, we saw the problem. We wanted to solve the problem, and that's exactly what we did. So to make an immediate impact, we knew it was the musculoskeletal side. These men and women get hurt daily on the job, and quite frankly, to Jim's point earlier, they go through that system, and it will take months and weeks and months and years to come back to the job. And once we found that out, we made the decision that we need to start something, help these men and women, give them the resources, quite frankly, that they deserve. Jim said it best, as athletes, we're winning and losing games. These folks, they're putting their life on the line. So how can we give these people the resources that they so deserve on a daily basis?
From the standpoint of establishing the foundation, the SHIELD program, everything that you guys are doing, who were the influences in, your over the course of your careers that really influenced you to want to have like that philanthropic, make that a priority of what you did?
Well, establishing the foundation kind of stemmed from sometimes a lack of funding that some of these departments have to provide these services to their members. In athletics, with teams, money is really never really a problem, right? There are always funds available to have the very best, and it seems like public safety, with the budgets that some of these departments kind of have to stay under or stick to, it's hard to find some of those funds to pay for a mental health app or mental health services, and so they don't seek it out because of the barriers that are kind of put up in front of them. So from the nonprofit standpoint, we wanted to create something, and the nonprofit is brand new. We're just trying to get the word out right now to somewhere we can go and raise funds to help provide these services to these members and to these departments. We don't want the lack of funding or those barriers to stop somebody from getting the treatment they need to possibly save a life. So that was the whole goal behind because a lot of times with our ProTeam Tactical, ProTeam Wellness businesses, we talk to these cities, we talk to these departments, and, there's a cost that comes along with those services. So, we try to make it as affordable as possible, but if it's not in their annual budgets, it's not going to be provided. So how do we get over that barrier, get over that hurdle? And the foundation was a way we saw doing that. Let's go out there. Let's talk to all the people that support public safety, first responders. Let's raise some funds so we can use those funds to provide the services to the members and to these departments that can't afford it from a budgetary standpoint.
I know that was, one thing that Coach Dungy, always brought into the building, like just thinking about like those big like leadership influences. Like I know he always had a priority on investing you guys as much as growing as men as, growing as players, and like having a broader approach to it, which is obviously something that you've implemented. Are there certain, coaches or teammates that each of you had that really influenced how you've, approached this standpoint and, wanting to take it to a greater level of helping to improve the lives of others from more so of a nonprofit standpoint?
Yeah, for me, Coach Dungy did it for me. And I'm going to tell you a story that I don't think I've told very many people, but I had a shoulder injury going into my second year with the Colts, and I couldn't do anything from an off-season standpoint throughout the summer. I spent a lot of time in the training room, kind of was going down that dark hole because all the guys were out there practicing. I was going into my second year. This was my career at the time, so it was my livelihood. And you start thinking about all these different things and the stresses come into play, the anxiety comes into play, the depression kind of comes into play. And I remember him coming in and sitting by me one day throughout that summer and just saying, hey, God put you in this situation with this injury because there's other aspects of your life that you need to deal with that don't include sports right now or don't include athletics. So go deal with those, whatever those may be, and this will be here when you get back. And it just kind of relieved all that stress and anxiety I was going through because there's so many mixed emotions when you're going through an injury, especially ones that keeps you out for a few months and you can't do the thing that you were kind of meant to do. But that helped me. That helped me understand that there's leaders and there's leaders that, help people kind of rise above the challenges that they're facing. And I'll never forget that moment because he got me through that summer. I was able to come back, be healthy, make the team again my second year, and then obviously play 6 years with the Colts. So that was one of those situations for me that says there's, one of the greatest things you can do in life is be there for others and help others out. And I hope that people see what we're trying to do as that, because that's what we're trying to do. It's our careers, it's our livelihoods now is these businesses and taking care of first responders. But as long as we're making enough money to take care of our families and take care of those first responders, that's exactly what we're going to do.
Jim, I'm so glad that you said that. And I know it's something that we've connected about in the past about, something that first responder community and Project 44, for example, have in common. Although prior to these, conversations, we don't have any formal connection or reason to connect, but beyond the idea of showing up for other people and putting others' wellness before your own and making the decision to wake up every morning with others' well-being in mind. Talk to us a little bit about your firsthand experience now working directly with this first responder community and what we can take away from that daily choice within that community to, make a living, a lifelong commitment to show up for other people. And how can we apply that to other communities that we're just hoping to affect with a similar idea?
You look at the first responder community, and they truly are heroes. I mean, a hero is defined as someone that shows bravery and courage in the face of danger, right? Without hesitation, kind of putting their own well-being aside, putting their lives at risk to go and protect the well-being of others. If that's not, a higher calling, and we should all be grateful and appreciative and show that population the admiration and appreciation that they deserve. It's very similar. That community is so loyal and so willing to go above and beyond to help people out. And I think that's where we got connected with Project 44 and working with first responder community is just, going out of your way to be on the donor list for bone marrow, right? I mean, it doesn't take a whole lot to go out there and be willing to be on that list and going above and beyond and just possibly save a life, right? I mean, that's what first responders do. They go out of their way. They've chosen this career to give themselves and possibly give the ultimate sacrifice. And because of that, they should be praised. And they should be given, at the very least, the very best in tools and resources to make sure they're at their best while they're trying to protect us and serve us and serve the communities that they all are a part of. So there's no greater cause than, protecting others and giving your life for that cause. So, and they're willing to do that. So we should be willing to, do whatever we can to provide them with whatever they need to be at their very best.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that the idea of reciprocity is so massive. And really in any space you're talking about, right? You can't expect the best out of somebody if you're not willing to give the best of yourself. So when you look at, I know that we're not too far in from the establishment of ProTeam Tactical, and very recently, into ProTeam Foundation. But what kind of results are you seeing from the first responders who are able to actually, participate in your services and, benefit from your services? Like, what's kind of the ripple effect of what you all are creating here?
The public safety community was hungry for something like this. They really were. The response has been overwhelming. I think they truly enjoy our services because they know that we're there to really help them out. And a lot of first responders were athletes before they became first responders, whether it be high school, college, some of them even professional athletes. So they know the model that we're trying to provide to them, right? They've lived it. They've gone in athletic training rooms. They've had injuries that they've had to get taken care of. And they know what it's like to be taken care of by people that truly care about them and want to get them back healthy and safely and efficiently. So the response from them has been overwhelming. ProTeam Tactical started out here in Indiana, taking care of the city of Indianapolis, police and fire. Now we've grown to have 5 clinics here in Indiana, taking care of most of the public safety in the state. We've grown outside the state to the city of Louisville in Kentucky to take care of their police, fire, EMS, and corrections. We just opened a clinic in Las Vegas to take care of the Las Vegas Metro Police Department and the surrounding agencies for the city of Las Vegas. We got a clinic opening coming up in Arkansas, in Little Rock, to take care of their police and fire. And there's so many, as the word kind of gets out there, it's so many agencies kind of coming to us and working with us, trying to figure out how we could provide the services to the men and women in their departments, in Oklahoma and Philadelphia and Texas. And it's been overwhelming. The growth has been, really fast, really, really strong. And we're hoping the mental health side comes along with it, because we just started doing the mental health services the last couple of years here in Indiana, and that's kind of grown along with it. And then obviously with the struggles of the budgetary standpoint, that's where the nonprofit comes in. We just started that in 2024, so we're hoping to grow that along with it to help with some of those financial budgetary items. But the growth has been overwhelming. It's been awesome, and we couldn't be happier.
Joey, you mentioned earlier, attacking the mental health standpoint, as an injury, itself, and addressing that from that standpoint. Maybe for people who aren't familiar of what first responders are dealing with after they incur something, or even, Jim, you touched on a little bit of that isolation that you felt when you were going through the injury from your standpoint. What are these first responders really experiencing and struggling with that you're now able to address from that holistic mental health standpoint?
Back when we played, mental health wasn't even discussed or talked about. And today, all the sports teams are doing a really good job of trying to be proactive when it comes to that. When we were suffering, and trust me, we suffer from anxiety and stress and depression and everything else. We've gone through the gamut. But we are always told to, throw some dirt on it, rub some dirt on it, and get your ass back on the field. And that was our job, right? So today, I would still say a lot of first responders are still doing that. They're still, they're suffering from stress and anxiety or PTSI or whatever it may be, and just kind of bottling it up, and quite frankly, turning to substance abuse or things of that nature. And Krissi, you asked about our success within, our businesses. One of our biggest successes is, we've been told just in year one, quite frankly, that we've saved 3 lives. How do you put a price on that? What is the return on investment on that? Why aren't more people funding, mental health services and things of that nature? So, as an athlete, we've suffered all the same things. That's what is so cool about our businesses, is just the similarities from athletes to tactical athletes. And, they experience the same injuries on the field from a musculoskeletal side. We experience the same injuries off the field from, a mental health side. So we want to be proactive. We want to take care of these men and women and really get them feeling comfortable coming forward and taking care of that strain, that sprain, that tweak. And on the mental health side, same thing. Treat that minor, injury, so to speak. Empty that bucket quickly. Don't carry it with you throughout your career to where you're going into retirement and you're unhealthy. And quite frankly, we talk about it all the time. The number one stat that we focus on is the average life expectancy after retirement for a public safety member is 5 to 7 years, which is terrible.
Not good enough.
And then, Laura, you mentioned losing your identity earlier. Like, how did you guys get into this business? What was your motivation? And we struggled with it after sports. Like, what the hell do we do now? How can we make an impact? Quite frankly, you play in front of thousands of people and you get that adrenaline rush and you get that self-fulfillment. That's what a lot of these people in public safety are after and struggling with too. And that's where a lot of this substance abuse and, divorce and everything else comes from. We want to eliminate we don't want them to rub dirt on it and get back on the field. We want them to get treated to where after retirement, those 5 to 7 years, it becomes 15, 20, 25. They're enjoying it with their grandkids. They're going fishing. They're around, quite frankly. So that is our whole mission. We're very, very passionate about it. Just the proactive approach, the holistic approach. Quite frankly, the shit that we got, the resources that we got, the everything that we received, we want to give that back to these people.
It's also the similarity of team between those two, right? First responders you're part of a team. You guys were parts of teams, baseball, football, all of that. That's another similarity too. I think when you're not used to being alone. You're
right.
Used to being around. You're having, the dynamic of a locker room or the dynamic of a firehouse or, a police department.
Yeah, and you'll see a lot of times that a police officer will get hurt and his department will go on a critical incident and something will happen to somebody else and he feels guilty because he wasn't there to be there for the other officer that got hurt. So, it's the 15, 20, 25, 30-year careers in serving in public service of their communities, and then they're only living 5 to 7 years after they retire. That is not good enough. If they're going to, a lot of it stems from what they see over their careers. You got to imagine, public safety first responders going to the most worst case scenarios. They see death. They see, so many difficult things from a critical incident standpoint. They can't just pack that inside, right? They just can't, because sooner or later that bucket's going to overflow and then you're talking a tragic situation. So what we try to preach is empty that bucket. You can't decide what you're going to see and not see from that job standpoint. It's what you've chosen as a career. But if we can, meet annually, talk to somebody, kind of empty that bucket along the way, hopefully it's not, filling up inside you and there's no tipping point to where you feel like there's no other choice but to end the situation, or turn to drugs or turn to alcohol or turn to things like, to try to numb the pain. It's trying to give them those resources and having it easily get to those resources so they can empty that bucket so they don't just kind of pack it inside.
One example I always talk about, and you guys will remember this, when DeMar Hamlin went down on the field when they were playing the Cincinnati Bengals, right? Cardiac arrest, tragic situation. And what happened after that situation? The athletes, they made the decision to stop playing because they saw a cardiac arrest right then and there. A police officer or a firefighter, they go on a cardiac arrest, they see that same thing every single day. They don't have the choice to stop playing. They have to go on that next run.
Yeah, they get in their car and do it again.
They have to do it again. So as an athlete, we don't see that on a daily basis. It was shocking to those players, right? It would shock any of us. But to these public safety members that they're seeing it every day, they have to bottle that up. They have to go on that next run. How do you deal with that? How do you respond to that? And that's where we want to be able to provide that outlet to them to where they can, go to, vent, have the discussions on both sides and stay as healthy as possible.
And then again, to not take that home to their families, right? I mean, that's got to be the hardest part. You know, you see all that stuff, you go home to your families, your wife, your kids, your husband, your kids, and you got to put on that happy face. Well, I mean, you know, that's hard. That's tough to do. And, you know, we got to give them better.
Man, that is a shocking statistic on the 5 to 7 years. I would never have guessed that. Joey, you kind of tongue in cheek said, you know, back when we played, which I think I have like age dysmorphia. I'm not aware of my own age at this point yet, but it doesn't seem like that long ago that you guys were playing competitively. But obviously a lot has changed in a fairly short amount of time, right? Like we're not talking 50 years here. We're talking about, you know, really a pretty truncated
20
amount
years?
of
Are you
time
making
here.
us feel old, Krissi?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I was going to say like a decade, but you know, somewhere like it's not that long. It's really not that
Little
long.
longer.
Let's be honest. But, you know, when we look at how much has changed in that amount of time, what do you think is going to be kind of the next biggest change to come? Or what do you expect to see in the industry of, you know, tactical support, medical support, mental health support, you know, first responder community? How do you think that those services and those needs are going to continue to evolve when we look out the next 20 years?
Well, the good news is mental and physical health are now on the radar, whereas before it was not. It wasn't discussed. It wasn't talked about. It wasn't even mentioned. So I think the evolution of, quite frankly, our services, we want our services to be the norm going forward. Right now, we're still on that cutting edge forefront of introducing a lot of what we do to these agencies and departments. You know, we go in, it's still very foreign to them. You know, how do we take care of our men and women? The thought process is there. It's just they don't know how to do it. So as we continue to grow and spread the word, and honestly, as sports starts to continue to shed the light on mental and physical health, that only helps all the different agencies out there to be able to go to their mayors, go to their governors, go to their city officials and say, we need these resources. The biggest asset to any sports team or department is that individual, is that player. It's the cop, it's the firefighter. That's the biggest asset of any sports team or any agency or fire department. Now it's time to start dumping the resources on the public safety side into the asset. It's done on the sports team. It's sports side. It's not done a lot on the public safety side. So our goal, whether it's us or somebody else, is for these people to get the services that they deserve. And that's expedited musculoskeletal care. It's expedited mental health care. And really for us to become, quite frankly, the norm rather than the exception as we go forward, you know, in the next 10 or 15 years. And as technology evolves and everything else evolves, we'll evolve. But right now, it's giving that individualized, specialized care to these tactical professionals. You want to add to that?
Yeah, there's other things that are offered or need to be offered as we continue to grow, and that's strength conditioning, right? That's nutrition. That's, you know, from the mental and behavioral health standpoint, it's financial wellness, helping individuals make sure they're okay financially, because it's all those added stressors that life throws at you that you kind of need to deal with to make sure you're living a holistically healthy life. And we want to be able to provide those resources, whatever it may be, to be able to remove all the stressors in their lives so they can, when they're on the job, they can do the job well, protect and serve, and then retire into the next phase of their life without carrying any of that extra baggage with them. They're financially healthy, they're physically healthy, they're mentally healthy, they're eating right, they're working out, and they're living that holistic, healthy lifestyle. And there's a starting point, and then it's how you grow from there. Where can you make the biggest impact, the biggest differences to really surround them with all the tools that they need to live that healthy lifestyle?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the 3 lives saved in the past year. I just really want to applaud your efforts on that. We celebrate smaller numbers too on the Project 44 side, but the value of one life is immeasurable. So kudos to you all for identifying a need and really filling that need. For people who are listening today, how can they find you if they need your services, if they want to support the foundation, finding you digitally? How can listeners find ProTeam Tactical and Foundation?
Really not hard to find. Just kind of Google the name, Google the, ProTeam Tactical Performance, ProTeam Wellness, ProTeamWellness.com, ProTeamTacticalPerformance.com. You can kind of get on there. It has our locations. It has everything that we do. It has the people that we employ that serve public safety. Our email's on there, our phone number's on there. Any way that they want to get a hold of us, they can get a hold of us. And that's individual public safety members or the departments or even cities that these departments work in if they want to, get on there and contact us, because you'd be surprised. A lot of cities do step up and take care of their first responders really, really well. City of Indianapolis, City of Westfield, City of Noblesville, City of Fishers, a bunch of cities here in Indiana, central Indiana, take care of their first responders really well and give them all the tools and resources that they need. But if you go on to inquire about the Shield app or anything that we do, just go ahead and kind of look us up, shoot us an email, shoot us a call, and we'll be happy to get back to you. We'll get back to you relatively quickly, because, we're here to serve them.
Appreciate you guys giving us so much time today, and even more so just what you're doing and how you're improving and taking care of those people who work so hard to protect and serve all of us, that you're able to then protect and serve from all the services that you guys are providing. And I feel like that we need to do this and have another conversation in 6 months, another 12 months, to just learn more about how much you're growing and how much this impact is just continuing to grow and expand across the country, as you guys have already had such great success. Appreciate you guys.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you for having us on today. Krissi, thank you very much. Larra, it was so good to see you. I hope everything is great. And anytime you guys want to have us on, we would love to be on. We'll keep you updated on, obviously, our growth and our success, and any way we can partner with Project 44 and getting that word out and using our connections within the departments and public safety to help with your mission. We are all for. So thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Finding 44. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. Follow Project 44's mission at project44.org and find us on social media at Join Project 44.